London was drowning in rain the night the illusion finally cracked, and somewhere behind the polished glass of a television studio, Jamie Dornan sat beneath white lights, looking like a man who hadn't slept properly in months. Not because of scandal, not because of headlines, because there is a particular exhaustion that comes from pretending your life still fits you after it stopped fitting a long time ago. The producers thought they were about to film another polished celebrity interview, the sort audiences consume without remembering by morning. A few harmless questions, a few charming answers, another actor selling another project. But what happened in that room carried the weight of something much darker than gossip. It was the sound of a man quietly admitting that the life everyone envied had already collapsed behind closed doors. And the strange thing was, the collapse had not arrived through screaming matches or betrayal or tabloid disaster. It arrived through silence. The kind of silence that settles into a marriage so slowly that neither person notices it until the house feels emotionally colder than the streets outside. Jamie understood that before anyone else did. Long before the public caught on. Long before the headlines started inventing reasons. Long before fans began searching old photographs for clues hidden in smiles. Because the truth about relationships is rarely explosive in the beginning. Most endings do not start with one catastrophic moment. They begin with distance so subtle it feels temporary. A postponed conversation. A missed dinner. A tired glance. Two people slowly becoming witnesses to each other's lives instead of participants in them. And by the time the cameras rolled that evening in London, Jamie looked like someone carrying years of unspoken realization in his chest. The interviewer smiled confidently at first, unaware he was about to step into territory most celebrities spend entire careers avoiding. Questions moved predictably through films, directors, future ambitions, the mechanics of fame. Jamie answered politely, even warmly, but there was something detached in the way he spoke, as if part of him had already left the room. Viewers would later replay the footage obsessively, searching for the exact second his emotional armor began to crack. Some said it happened when his wedding ring finger twitched unconsciously against the armrest. Others insisted it was the pause after the interviewer casually mentioned home life. But the truth is, Jamie had probably been preparing for this confession long before he entered the studio. Men like him do not suddenly become honest on camera. They become exhausted enough to stop performing. And exhaustion has a way of making truth sound inevitable. The interviewer leaned forward slightly and mentioned Amelia Warner by name. The room shifted instantly. Not dramatically. Quietly. That was the frightening part. Jamie's expression did not collapse. He did not panic. Instead, he became still. So still that even the crew reportedly sensed something irreversible approaching. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "Some doors," he said slowly, "once closed should never be opened again." It did not sound angry. That is what unsettled people most. Audiences are trained to recognize rage, scandal, betrayal. But calm acceptance? That is harder to process. Because calm means the grief has already happened privately. Calm means the person speaking is no longer fighting for survival. And in that moment, millions realized they were not watching a celebrity protect an image. They were watching a husband finally stop protecting an illusion. The internet exploded within minutes, but the public misunderstood the real significance immediately. People assumed the story was about divorce. It wasn't. Divorce was simply the visible consequence. The real story was about identity. About what happens when two people spend years preserving a version of themselves that no longer exists. Jamie and Amelia had spent over a decade being treated as the rare Hollywood exception. While other celebrity relationships detonated publicly, theirs remained wrapped in privacy and restraint. They avoided constant red carpets. They protected their children. They stayed out of chaos. To the outside world, they represented something almost extinct: stability. But stability and happiness are not the same thing, and one of the most dangerous things a couple can become is admired. Admiration creates pressure. Once the world begins seeing your relationship as proof that real love still exists, you stop living only for yourselves. Suddenly you are preserving an idea people depend on emotionally. Fans project hope onto you. Media outlets turn you into evidence that fame does not destroy intimacy. And the terrifying thing about becoming symbolic is that symbols are not allowed to break publicly. So instead, they crack in silence. Friends close to the couple would later hint that the emotional separation began years earlier, hidden beneath routines and responsibilities. There were no dramatic betrayals, no explosive revelations. That absence of scandal actually made the story more haunting because it forced people to confront a possibility they feared deeply. Love can disappear without hatred replacing it. Jamie's career kept accelerating internationally, while Amelia built a quieter world centered around music, motherhood, and emotional stability away from Hollywood machinery. At first, the differences seemed manageable. Temporary sacrifices, necessary compromises. That is how distance disguises itself in successful relationships. It presents itself as adulthood. You tell yourself the separation is practical, not emotional. You convince yourself that exhaustion is normal. That disconnection is temporary. That once schedules calm down, intimacy will return naturally. But time changes people whether they notice it or not. Years pass. Roles evolve. Priorities shift. And eventually couples wake up beside someone they still love, but no longer fully recognize. According to those close to them, Jamie often returned from long shoots feeling strangely displaced inside his own home. Not unwanted, just emotionally out of rhythm. The routines continued. Conversations happened. Parenting responsibilities remained intact. But beneath the surface, something vital had already begun fading. And perhaps the cruelest part of emotional drift is that nobody can point to the exact day it begins. That was the deeper tragedy hidden underneath Jamie's interview. Not heartbreak in the cinematic sense. Recognition. Recognition that two decent people had spent years trying to resurrect a version of themselves that belonged to another phase of life entirely. The public loves the fantasy that lasting relationships survive through persistence alone. Fight harder. Stay longer. Never give up. But Jamie's confession challenged that mythology directly. Because sometimes the relationship does survive technically while the emotional reality quietly disappears underneath it. People remain together long after the connection that once made them feel alive has transformed into duty, memory, or fear of hurting others. And duty can imitate love convincingly for years. Couples become experts at functioning. They organize schedules, raise children, smile in photographs, attend events, exchange supportive messages publicly. Meanwhile, intimacy erodes privately in microscopic ways impossible for outsiders to detect. The emotional language changes first. Then curiosity disappears. Then silence becomes more comfortable than honesty because honesty threatens the entire structure holding life together. By the time Jamie admitted, "We held on too long," viewers heard sadness in his voice. But there was something else there too. Relief. That relief disturbed audiences more than tears would have. Because relief suggested freedom. And freedom suggested that the marriage had become emotionally unsustainable long before anyone publicly acknowledged it. The interviewer, sensing the emotional gravity building inside the room, asked whether reconciliation remained possible. Jamie paused for a long moment. Too long for television, but not long enough to avoid the truth. When he finally answered, the sentence landed with terrifying simplicity. "There's no way back." Not, "I don't think so." Not, "Never say never." No ambiguity. No celebrity media training. Just finality. And people around the world reacted so intensely because those 4 words reflected fears far larger than one marriage. Everyone has something in life they secretly suspect cannot be repaired. A relationship. A friendship. A version of themselves. Jamie's statement triggered that universal anxiety instantly. What if some doors truly close forever? What if love sometimes survives emotionally while becoming impossible practically? What if letting go is not failure but recognition? Suddenly, this was no longer celebrity gossip. It became existential. News outlets transformed the interview into spectacle overnight, but much of the reporting missed the psychological depth underneath Jamie's words. They framed the story as heartbreak when it was actually about transformation. The man sitting in that chair did not sound destroyed. He sounded altered. There is a difference. Destroyed people search desperately for reversal. Altered people understand that returning backward would require becoming someone they no longer are. That is why Jamie's calmness felt so unnerving. He had already grieved privately before the public even knew grief existed. Insiders later described long periods where both he and Amelia operated more like respectful companions than romantic partners. Not cold, not hostile, just emotionally distant in ways difficult to articulate. One source claimed the saddest part was how polite they became with each other. Because excessive politeness inside intimate relationships often signals emotional caution. Couples stop risking vulnerability when they fear honesty may expose irreparable truths. They discuss logistics instead of longing, responsibilities instead of dreams, children instead of themselves. And eventually entire marriages become professionally functional while emotionally hollow. The outside world rarely notices because civility photographs beautifully. What made Jamie's confession resonate globally was the absence of blame. Modern audiences are conditioned to search for villains immediately. Someone must have cheated. Someone must have lied. Someone must have failed morally. But Jamie dismantled that narrative entirely. Sometimes love changes shape, he said quietly during the interview, and that sentence carried enormous emotional weight because it forced people to confront something deeply uncomfortable. Love is not always enough to preserve compatibility. Two people can remain good while becoming wrong for each other. That idea terrifies society because it removes the comforting simplicity of blame. If relationships only end through cruelty, betrayal, or selfishness, then audiences can protect themselves psychologically by avoiding those behaviors. But if relationships can dissolve simply through evolution, then nobody is fully safe. Time itself becomes the threat. Growth becomes dangerous. Change becomes destabilizing. Jamie's honesty shattered the fantasy that emotional maturity guarantees permanence. Behind the scenes, the emotional reality appeared even more complicated than the public realized. Sources close to the couple suggested Amelia had adapted more successfully to private life, while Jamie remained caught between public identity and personal exhaustion. Fame creates distortions inside relationships that outsiders rarely understand. One partner often becomes symbolic to the world while trying desperately to remain ordinary at home. The actor audiences fantasize about globally still has to navigate school runs, emotional fatigue, and domestic silence privately. Over time, those dual identities can become psychologically exhausting. Jamie reportedly struggled with the emotional whiplash of moving between intense filming schedules and increasingly fragile intimacy at home. Each environment demanded a different version of him. Publicly charismatic, privately stabilizing, professionally ambitious, emotionally available, and eventually the performance of balance becomes unsustainable, especially when both partners begin evolving in different directions psychologically. Then came the detail that shifted public perception permanently. During a later conversation, Jamie described returning home one evening to find Amelia sitting alone at the piano, playing softly without noticing he had entered. The image sounded cinematic, but its emotional significance ran far deeper. He said she looked peaceful, not happy with him, simply peaceful within herself. And in that instant, he understood something devastating. Sometimes the person you love most becomes happiest outside the emotional structure you built together. That recognition changes people permanently because it forces them to choose between possession and compassion. Many relationships survive through emotional dependency long after genuine compatibility fades. But Jamie's story hinted at something rarer and more painful. Two people recognizing each other's freedom mattered more than preserving appearances. Sometimes you love someone enough to want their peace, he reportedly said, even if you are no longer part of it. That line spread online rapidly because it contradicted the possessive mythology surrounding romance. Most love stories celebrate fighting to stay together at all costs. Very few explore the courage required to step aside gracefully. As weeks passed, public fascination only intensified because Jamie refused to exploit the situation emotionally. No dramatic interviews, no bitterness, no strategic leaks, silence. And silence always creates projection. Fans filled the absence with theories, grief, admiration, confusion. Some viewed him as heartbreakingly noble. Others suspected hidden details remained untold. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the entire story was how ordinary it sounded emotionally beneath the celebrity framing. Millions recognized themselves inside those confessions. The feeling of speaking politely while drifting internally. The exhaustion of preserving something already fading. The fear of admitting love alone cannot always repair disconnection. Jamie became less celebrity than mirror. And mirrors make people uncomfortable because they expose realities audiences spend years avoiding. Meanwhile, industry insiders quietly noted another layer beneath the story. Jamie's public image had long been built around romantic intensity. Ever since 50 Shades of Grey transformed him into an international obsession, audience projected fantasies onto him constantly. Desire, mystery, masculinity, emotional control. Yet the man emerging through these interviews looked profoundly different from the persona global fame created. He sounded introspective, tired, almost philosophical. Not seductive, reflective. And perhaps that contrast explains why the story captured public imagination so completely. People expected fantasy from Jamie Dornan. Instead, they received emotional realism. They expected scandal. Instead, they received grief without villainy. They expected performance. Instead, they encountered uncomfortable honesty. But underneath the calm language and poetic reflections, another question lingered unanswered. If Jamie had already emotionally accepted the ending, why speak publicly at all? Why now? Why risk dismantling one of Hollywood's last protected love stories unless something deeper pushed him toward honesty? That question haunted audiences because timing always reveals hidden pressure. People rarely confess life-altering truths without reason. Something had shifted internally. Something had reached breaking point. And those closest to the situation hinted the real emotional unraveling happened long before cameras entered the picture. The interview was not the beginning of the story. It was the aftermath. The visible crack after years of invisible strain. Which meant somewhere behind the graceful language and composed delivery existed moments far more painful than the public had yet heard about. And as rain continued sliding down the London studio windows that night, Jamie reportedly stood alone for several seconds after filming ended, staring silently into the darkness outside. Crew members later described the atmosphere as strangely heavy, almost intimate, as though everyone present understood they had witnessed more than celebrity vulnerability. They had watched someone bury a version of his future in real time. Yet there was another emotion lingering beneath the sadness too. Something quieter. Dangerous, even. Freedom. Because once people finally admit there is no way back, they also confront the terrifying possibility of becoming someone entirely new. And that was precisely where the real story was only beginning. Freedom sounded beautiful in theory, but nobody talks honestly about what freedom feels like the morning after your entire life changes shape. That was the part the public never saw. While headlines romanticized Jamie Dornan as the emotionally mature man who walked away gracefully,